Imagine uncovering a technology so advanced yet from a time so ancient it seems impossible. This is not the beginning of a science fiction story, but a glimpse into our investigation of technologies that history has forgotten. Tonight, we delve into the artifacts and relics that suggest there were civilizations, with knowledge perhaps far beyond our current understanding. These are not mere myths or legends. These are tangible pieces of a puzzle that could redefine our interpretation of human history. Join us as we explore these enigmas, piecing together the evidence of a past that might have been far different from what our textbooks tell us.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Deceptive Reality podcast. My name is Nick, and with me, as usual, is the gallant Bert.
Gallant? I know one, Nick.
You
yes.
know one. You got it.
I knew this day was going to come. Oh my gosh.
Can I tell you one that I debated using?
Yes, you can.
Now, this is difficult because I didn't know if I could pronounce it properly.
That'd be my fear.
Pulchritudinous.
Glad you didn't use that one, or I would not have known another one, Nick.
Yeah, it's kind of weird to call another man that too, at least from my perspective. So I decided not to use that one this week.
Solid. Hey, I'm down with it. For those that may not know what that word means, Nick, do you want to explain it to the folks?
The gallant one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Basically, gallant is chivalrous, courteous, especially towards the ladies. There you go. That's the eyebrow.
Married.
Well, that's a lady.
Folks.
Aren't you gallant towards your wife?
Stop coming at me, ladies. I'm taking man.
And that is the fear of a married man.
That's it. 100%. Listen, don't get near me now.
Yep,
don't get near
stay
me.
Back. Get him in trouble.
This is fire. Fire and brimstone for me. For me.
Harsh
Maybe
words for you.
Harsh words for you. Listen, I'll be sleeping on the couch. You will not like what you hear being called of yourself.
You'll be sleeping with the fishes. That's
yeah, you might be listening. Hey, I don't know.
We don't know.
She's a little crazy. She's a little crazy.
Now you're really in trouble.
I just earned myself a couch trip again.
Great.
Oh, man. I got to tell you this funny story. I can't. I'll get in trouble. Never mind. Disregard.
Oh, wow. That is real bad. You better edit that whole part out.
No, I'm going to leave it in. Listen, hey, it is what it is. It is what I didn't say anything wrong.
That's your April Fool right there.
April Fools. Yeah, we are recording this on April Fools. For anyone that's like, man, it's like a month and something after. Listen, we're recording this on April 1st.
I keep saying we got to stop referencing dates and stuff like this because it's just confusing to us. It's going to be confusing to them.
Well, we're totally going to be throwing a wrench in ours too, because we came up with we didn't come up with. One of our viewers came up with a genius idea of how to maneuver some of these around. For when this comes out, we would have already seen. We're on part 2 of you. I can never. Allagash? Is that how yours is pronounced?
Yeah, you got it that time.
Yes. So Nick's is Allagash. And then I've got a UFO episode that's going to come out. And then Nick has a vampire episode. And then I had a 2-parter. I don't know where I'm going to fit that in. So we'll say a 2-parter. And when I was talking to Cedric, we'll say his first name. I don't think I get in trouble for that. I was talking to Cedric, that's one of our viewers, and he was like, man, in one of your old episodes, you talked about a werewolf. Where's this episode? I'm like, listen, I haven't done that one yet. Then I was sitting there thinking, well, Nick did a vampire episode. I didn't tell Cedric this. I'm like, I could put it right behind that.
Yeah, that's trade secrets. You can't know that.
Yeah, you can't know all the secrets.
Sorry, Cedric.
Sorry. But I was like, man, that's a genius idea on my behalf. So I wish I would have thought of it, but it was technically Cedric who came up with a genius idea.
Well, got to give credit where credit's due.
Got to give credit. So in the future, Bert says, thank you, Cedric, for helping me figure this out.
It's going to be fun.
The other fun fact is, and I was just telling Nick this, that location's not very far from my house. So
yeah,
we're going to have some B-roll material. I can't guarantee anything. I'm working on some things, but I might add some some fun stuff. I might see if maybe I can get some sweet B-roll, maybe take you straight to where all this stuff happened, show you the roads where it happened, have that playing in the video, maybe talk about the fact that I live near there and add that to the narration and stuff. I don't know. I got a lot of ideas.
Maybe on the film there'll be a sound and I'll say something like, "Yep, sounds like a werewolf to me." That's just something I recently got criticized for, I guess. So.
Which is hilarious. I love it when Nick gets criticized. Usually me.
I kind of like it too, because then I feel like they've seen me, like I've been seen.
Yep.
Like if people don't criticize me, I'm not gonna, I don't feel included. So,
and listen, hey,
I like it.
I say, normally me, so it's nice when it's Nick for once.
You know what? Valid criticism. I'll definitely do it again, but valid criticism.
For anyone that doesn't know, we Nick and I talked about the Sierra sounds. This was for you guys. This would have been months ago,
right?
At least probably 2 months ago.
Oh, for us, a long time ago.
Yeah, for us, a long time ago. And I posted a short, for anyone that doesn't know, short 60-second or less video. And Nick, when I was talking about, it's going like whoop whoop whoop, and Nick's like, yep, sounds like a Bigfoot to me. Someone had made a comment says, with the paraphrasing and the quotations, sounds like a Bigfoot to me. And then there's a laughing emoji behind it. And it says, kind of like when we're playing Baccarat on Fridays. Oh, I love our comments sometimes.
I don't really know what Baccarat is, but I found that hilarious anyway. So
I think it's a board game. I'm like 95% sure it's a board game.
Yeah. I wish at least one of us would have known, then we wouldn't look so foolish, but here we are.
I think it's an old board game.
Yeah.
So we got that going on.
It's not Pandemic. It's not Dead of Winter. I don't know these then.
And the best part is this next episode, so I have no clue what we're covering. So I tried to get a shirt that would encompass aliens and Bigfoots and UFOs.
Well, you hit this time.
Yes!
Yeah.
I knew this day would come.
Yeah, you got it right this time, but it's sort of in a is it, isn't it kind of way.
Ooh.
Yeah. We're going into a concept that's actually being seriously looked at by some serious scientists in some prestigious schools. Now, some people might find these people to be crazy, but I don't think when it comes to science there's anything we should just dismiss offhand.
I agree.
So
everything should be looked at.
Yeah, why not? We got time.
Exactly. We got nothing but time.
That's right. If you're looking into something and you don't examine all the possibilities, you can miss something real easy. So we should be checking everything out.
That's facts.
Mm-hmm. Sure is. Do you have any idea what we're going to talk about?
UFOs, aliens, or Bigfoot currently?
All right, not the Bigfoot, but
dang,
I know.
We need a good Bigfoot episode. We need a good one.
I tried, but I presented like the most foolish Bigfoot episode there ever was, which actual story from this guy. So if you ever go listen to that, I want you to keep close in mind that I did not make up that story. That was his own telling.
That was a real book.
It was real something.
Well, I know that whenever we're looking for episodes, and honestly, we've recently that you guys will already have an option. We're adding some stuff that we've never added before. Werewolf, vampire.
Yep. I didn't know if we'd ever do a vampire one, but I said, you know what? I like this whole story. Let's do it. I know Bert's not a fan, but that's just because he's sort of like a werewolf supporter. So
that's right. Support my local werewolf. Literally, it's 20 minutes away.
I find that people can like a vampire or they can like a werewolf, but they don't seem to like both.
That is facts.
Yeah, I think that's from that White Wolf role-playing game that has like vampires pitted against werewolves or underworld.
Underworld too. That is correct. Interesting. So we know that this is a UFO story. Is this
tangentially
correct? Is this this country or Canada or another country story?
This is a world story.
Wow. Okay.
We're going to go do a little globe trotting, actually. Yeah. I kind of asked because you had mentioned you had traveled to a location. And one of my talking points in this is a location with the same name. So when I told you about it before we started recording, I was like, oh, this is probably well known. Did I just give away what we're talking about? But it appears I haven't, so I think we're safe.
Nick has not gave anything away so far.
I came close, but I walked that tightrope.
So is our very first section, does it tell us the start of the story or does it give the concept away?
It's going to give the concept away, and then you'll know what we're going to talk about.
On a clear night, looking out into the stars, it's hard to imagine that there isn't someone, somewhere, looking back. In the vast expanse of the Milky Way, there are countless planets that could potentially support life, sparking the intriguing possibility of other civilizations. Currently, Earth stands alone as the only known habitat for life, with Homo sapiens considered to be the pinnacle of technological achievement among its inhabitants. However, it may be worth questioning these assumptions. In a thought-provoking paper titled The Silurian Hypothesis, named after an ancient reptilian society featured in Doctor Who, researchers from NASA's Goddard Institute for Space Studies and the University of Rochester explore whether humanity truly represents the zenith of civilization on our planet. Can we confidently claim that we are the most advanced technological species to have ever inhabited Earth? Adam Frank, a professor of physics and astronomy at Rochester and one of the paper's authors, asks, "Our industrial era has only lasted for 3 centuries, whereas life on land has thrived for nearly 400 million years. Frank suggests that if humanity were to disappear, future inhabitants of Earth millions of years from now might struggle to recognize our impact on the planet. Conversely, if a previous civilization existed here millions of years ago, identifying any remnants of it could pose a challenge for us. The level of technological advancement in a civilization inversely correlates with the evidence it leaves behind, as highly advanced technology tends to have a lower environmental footprint, resulting in fewer discernible traces of its existence. This is true for the search for life in the cosmos, but also for previous advanced civilizations in our own distant past. Tonight we will explore what some call out-of-place artifacts and the possibility of lost civilizations."
So, just to be super clear, because I saw your face when they mentioned the name of the paper, they're not saying reptilians. They just named it after a Doctor Who episode.
Thank God.
Yeah. I don't want to get into that, and I realized how it sounds, but I thought that was a good switcheroo to play on people. These are actual NASA scientists. They're just quirky. They're not saying it's reptilian people.
I mean, listen, when I heard it, Nick, I thought to myself, well,
you know what? Maybe someday we'll talk about that, but it won't be me bringing it up, I'm pretty sure. So, if you want to, you're more than welcome to. But
when I heard that, I'm like, well, we're going there. I thought they were supposed to be based on science. Good night.
Oh yeah,
wow.
No, this is science, and all throughout this thing, I'm only quoting people who are actual legit scientists. I'm going to mention someone who's not, and you'll know them when you hear them. But I'm not quoting that person. But back to the main topic of what we just heard. Have you heard the theory that there could have been advanced, maybe non-human civilizations on Earth before us?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that at the beginning of this?
it's very complex for me, Nick, because religiously I can't think that way.
Yeah, I suppose, but then don't some people who are like apologetics or whatever say that, all this could be a process by which God created everything? That could still fit there. Or is that no? You don't think so?
Well, I know so.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
that is an off branch of religion that is the minority,
right?
Because technically, from a biblical standpoint, the stance is on day one,
right?
The heavens and the earths and the firmaments was created, and then day two. So according to that, the first man on earth, Adam, first woman on earth, Eve. Now, that being said, I do watch a very interesting gentleman, and that's how I know the vast majority of this. And he goes into the whole Anunnaki and how we were basically created as slaves.
Right.
And we wasn't supposed to be, and that caused a war in space and a whole bunch of stuff. I don't know exactly know what we're going into here, but that's
not that.
What I've okay.
Not that. No. This is the set. Just we're basically going into two categories that are sort of related. One is out of place artifacts, which I think you'll have no problem getting into that. And the other part is civilizations potentially non-human before our own. Now, Adam and Eve, could it have been people from the previous civilization? Would that be counter to the Bible as well?
Well, here's what I always say about the Bible.
Yeah.
The Bible sometimes is wrote very tongue-in-cheek. So, and I think that's why a lot of people can take it for a different meaning from time to time. Everything was created in 6 days and we rested on the seventh. Does that truly mean 6 days and a rest on the seventh?
Well, what's a day when there's no sun and what's a day here? What's a day on the moon? What's a day on Mars?
Yeah.
So that must leave some room for interpretation.
It can. Yeah. And that's where it becomes complicated. So It's like, anything is possible. Now, the reference that guy brings up, and I kind of see where he's going. Have you ever watched the movie, is it Prometheus?
Oh, from the Alien series.
Yes.
Where life is seeded by.
Yes.
Yeah. That's called panspermia, actually.
Is that what it is?
Yep.
Perfect. So I've only seen it once. And that's kind of like somewhat of like a generalization similar to what that guy does. I wish I could remember his name. I can never remember his name. He's super interesting to listen to. He brings up a lot of stuff too that it scares me when I watch him, because I'm like, man, I get what he's saying. Like
he's convincing, right?
He's very convincing, but then he says something off the Star Trek, Star Wars kind of thing, and I go, oh, you kind of lost me a little bit there, coach. But yeah, he's really good at kind of breaking some of that stuff down. But he kind of has the theory similar to the whole Adam and Eve, but it's an Adam and Eve as in we were created as slaves, because the number one thing he talks about is when you look at our DNA, our DNA is composed of 26 versus 28, like everything, like the mammals typically have.
Right.
And the two that were missing was genetically mutated. And his theory behind that is it was genetically mutated to cause us to die after a certain length of time. That was the whole purpose behind it.
I can see why that would be something that might be persuasive to believers in the Bible, because a lot of the biblical stories have people living 500 years, 700 years.
Thousands.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And the
like
original
longest-
people forever, if they weren't.
Yeah. If they
weren't-
didn't screw up Adam
if
and
they
Eve,
weren't
jacked it
naughty
up.
puppies.
But his theory is there was civilizations that was here before,
Mm-hmm.
and then with that civilization, they needed basically slave labor. That's why
Right.
they say, and I tell you, he's a scientist. He's
Mhm.
super smart, but he talks about how, like, especially when you look at the different races, one of the things that he talks about is, people from Africa, the reason their skin is dark is not due to sunlight. That's a mutation.
Okay.
And his name is not on his thing. For anyone out there, this is what the guy looks like.
Okay.
But super interesting guy. But his theory was we was created as the slave labor
Mm-hmm.
to do things, and the reason that they made us different colors or cultures was so that way, like cattle, someone can identify like a brand
yeah.
and say, that's Caucasian, that's mine.
I've heard that before.
Yes.
And
And it's very convincing. It's like a branding
Yeah.
for cattle.
it sure is. It is convincing to hear that kind of thing. And I mean, you can't absolutely dispute that kind of thing either. I mean, that could be something.
Because he's right. It's not due to the fact that, microevolution occurred and then made somebody's skin darker, or their eye slits different, or the way their ears sit, or the way their nose is formed. Like that doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
I'm still a big fan of the evolution thing, but I can see where he's coming from on that,
Yeah.
because you're either part of the people who believe in like Darwin evolution, or you're not, and one can't say that the other's definitively wrong.
Even
So-
Darwin in the end said, though, that he believed that he was incorrect.
I think that was an out of context remark from what I've seen. We'll have to look into it more, but I don't think he thought he was wrong about everything. I think he thought he was wrong about some parts.
Could be. I don't
But
know.
The Origin of Species is a pretty hefty book. It's like that. But I mean, from what you're telling me of what he said, and I'd heard that before, that's an interesting point of view if you come at it like that, because we have done that with our domesticated animals, so we know that
For sure.
could happen, because, and this is something that a lot of people don't like to hear, religious and non-religious, is, from my opinion, we're another variety of animal. So what we can do to them could be done to us.
Right. For sure.
Now the being a slave race thing, maybe we don't know that, but what they're trying to look into now is, has civilization developed on Earth, been destroyed or left, and come again? And that's sort of what we're looking at. And from my point of view, I'm not sure it would. And again, I'm not a Bible believer, but just looking at it from the biblical perspective, I don't think that necessarily contradicts anything, because we have whole varieties of people who were wiped off the earth, but there's still people elsewhere that could come back, and that kind of thing.
For sure. Yeah.
So I don't think that necessarily contradicts anything, unless it's not human people.
Well, even in the Bible, they're not human people.
What do you mean? Like the first
In the
people?
Bible, the first people were technically the first entities that was on Earth was not human. Technically,
Really? Tell me more about that.
they were the fallen angels. They were technically here at the same time frame.
So in a way, this could fit with that anyway. Then, how
Could.
long were they here?
Oh, we don't. we know that they were cast out of the heavens. That's the Bible doesn't see the Bible doesn't have a timeline.
Right.
Now, when he created the heavens and the earths and the firmaments, again, if you want to go real loose biblical and you want to have a little fun with it, okay?
Let's go loosey-goosey here.
Loosey-goosey, okay?
Right.
Don't you Bible scholars yell at me.
Yeah,
this is
by the way,
loosey-goosey.
We're proposing things. This doesn't reflect Bert's actual
Correct.
beliefs.
I'm just having a little fun in the sandbox.
Yeah,
okay?
I'm also forcing to do
yes, this is forced.
Right.
Technically, if we can't count things as days and we look at things as in maybe a day was 1,000 years, we don't know. He created the firmaments of the heavens and the earth on day one.
Right.
That's day one. If he did that and then he cast out the angels could technically be here for, however long day one really is.
Right.
And then we would have been created as time progressed, but they would have already been here. Now, I've heard some secular stuff that their concept and idea is the fallen angels was already here, and that's what caused the manipulation of Adam and Eve, because when they talk about the serpent, the serpent being the devil, they're not necessarily referring to Lucifer, which is what
I've heard that's a common misconception. That a lot of people think that.
Yeah, and that's not technically. It would be the equivalent of a demon. Is probably what we would use in our realm as a close knit tie-in. But even if you, biblically speaking, even if you do away with all that and humans are here, there was a race called the Nephilim, and they mated with which goes right back to that guy. I didn't even think about that till I just said that. It kind of scares me a little bit. In the biblical, well, okay, so man, I'm going to get myself in so much trouble. So there's also a book.
Bert is just stating facts. These are not his beliefs.
I'm just stating some things. There is another book that is the Book of Enoch, which also somewhat, quote unquote, fills in the gaps of some of the things that's not biblically there.
Right.
And if you follow that guy, whatever that guy's name is, I can't remember what the guy's name is. What he's saying is that there was a civilization that's already here. Let's say that civilization was the fallen angels, like what we referred to.
Right.
I'm just trying to do a tie-in here. They're saying the human race was created. The Bible says Adam and Eve, but Eve was created of Adam, which would technically be genetic mutation.
Right. Okay. I'm sorry. I was thinking about something there, because DNA would come. You could get DNA, like really good bone marrow from a rib bone, which would make perfect sense if you tried it. Okay. Never mind. Sorry. I drifted. But let's say, for example, they're here. Right.
What that guy said was that because you can't have a case where Adam and Eve would have mated with each other constantly and then mated with their children, or we'd have a case like King Tut, and you know how you deal with all the. So what they're saying is, what he said was that humans started mating with, I think it was the Anunnaki or whatever civilization was here first.
Whatever we're calling them, the previous civilization that weren't related to Adam and Eve. Correct. But in that, it changed and altered the DNA structure even for us. In which we talk about the story of Moses all the time and the freeing of the slaves, and he tries to tie in and say that's a very similar kind of thing that was happening, because as we were being used for slave labor, that's why, like the Tower of Babel, when we look at that and how every race and stuff changed, they were building a structure. And what he's saying is, we was building a structure, and that's how everyone said, that's my slave labor, that's my slave labor. Right.
That's the switching of that from a biblical reference. But in addition to that, the other thing, when you look at it, The Nephilim was also mating with the human women, which would follow his story also. I never pieced that together till right now when we started talking about that. But it all kind of ties together. Now, is it all secular? And who knows, right?
Well,
the beauty of a lie is it's wrapped in the truth,
right?
Usually.
Well, let's just look at the things that I guess biblically you wouldn't dispute. That God cast out the fallen angels.
Yes, that is biblical.
Yep, that's biblical. And perhaps we can presume, since there really wasn't much else at the time, that some amount of them, or if not all of them, were cast out to our planet.
That's confirmed.
Now, maybe we would also say that they existed here for probably a fairly long amount of time.
Could be.
Now this part, I want you to like either confirm it or tell me I'm wrong, because I'm not sure about this, but when Adam and Eve left the garden, did they not come across pre-existing peoples?
Bible doesn't say that.
Oh, doesn't it? Oh, that might be something I just heard. But let's say, okay, we'll go back again. So we know that the fallen angels were on Earth. People come along, fallen angels are no more on Earth. Could have been a significant amount of time in between.
Well, you have to remember, if they would have come across angels or fallen angels, they wouldn't have known it wasn't human anyway.
That's true. Other than it would be someone that they hadn't met, and I think that they were told that they were the first, or no?
Bible doesn't say that.
Okay.
Because if you look at the story of Sodom and Gomorrah,
right,
there was 2 angels that came to them.
Right. But these were not fallen ones. These were regular.
Yeah, this was just...
These were on-the-job angels. Like,
Correct,
still employed with the big boss.
Big boss.
That's
yes,
right.
Sir.
But let's just say we know that there were fallen angels from a biblical point of view, and we know they were on Earth, and we can suspect, without going awry of anything, they were around for a long time. So
900 some years, yeah.
Right. So in that time, especially considering like our own timeline, if they're intelligent, they're going to make what? Structures, tools, places to live. They're probably a lot smarter initially than we started out. So maybe they have certain technologies. Maybe the ancient ones of us, learned something about that at certain times, forgot some things.
Well, we can confirm that just with what we found today. I mean, we can't recreate pyramids today.
Right.
We're incapable. We don't have that technology to even do that.
Yeah.
Not even close.
And there's other examples of that.
For sure.
So I think it would be fair to say in a lot of cases that we know that there's knowledge that came from somewhere that wasn't from us. A lot of that knowledge, and this is where I'm making a little logical leap, but I think you might see the point of it, that knowledge about how to do things on a planet like Earth is probably more likely to either come from experience with Earth or something exactly like Earth. So I'm thinking previous civilizations sometimes when it comes from that. Now, where they came from, that's what our original debate was kind of about. But but
I get where you're going.
Yeah. So basically, my point is that the Earth's like, it churns through artifacts, and if we were to disappear today, it would be a blink of an eye in the world to erase every existence of us. Pretty much.
Oh yeah. If we had an atomic nuclear fallout, more than likely, much like the biblical accounts, there would be 3 to 5% that would survive if it was a world. So let's use, for example, not to scare anyone out there, if we had a massive world war where everyone just sent their nukes up, Russia and the US alone would kill the Earth like 20 times.
Oh, yeah.
50 times.
Oh, yeah.
There would still be an offshoot of people that would survive.
Mm-hmm.
They could potentially have children down in the ground in bunkers, and then eventually, like Fallout,
mm-hmm.
be able to come out and survive. And to a degree, I think that some of that could have happened in the past.
Right. But, over
mm-hmm.
time, the memory of everything we were when we were on the surface is going to be long gone from memory. Like,
oh, for sure. We're going to start back over.
Right.
Again.
Exactly.
Prime example. I have a cell phone that can do the vast majority of my day to day.
Mm-hmm.
But if you killed off everyone that created that cell phone and I was the last person on Earth, I couldn't reduplicate it.
Heck no.
That's a one and done.
Heck no. And a funny fact, our cell phones today can't calculate the movement of planets as accurately as the Antikythera mechanism can, which is considered the world's first computer that we know of.
Correct.
So, like, it works both ways.
Correct. But then, I mean, look at the pyramids. Pyramids is a prime example.
Mm-hmm.
They completely align with things that we weren't capable of even seeing until 50 years ago, 60 years ago.
Yeah. So
we didn't confirm any of this stuff until like 1930 or something like that. 1925, 1930. So, I mean, somehow this technology got here. It's not like someone was like, you know what? I bet there's a constellation right there.
Right. Exactly.
That didn't happen. Yeah.
No, that definitely didn't happen. I don't think anyone can dispute that.
No.
But you gave me a real good segue to the next segment.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You said if we were to have a big nuclear disaster,
mm-hmm.
we could destroy the world 20 times over. And what would be left of that? Well, there might be some evidence that kind of thing has happened.
If we were to look for previous civilizations on Earth, what would science suggest we look for? Our cities cover less than 1% of the surface, Adam Frank says. Any comparable cities from an earlier civilization would be easy for modern-day paleontologists to miss, and no one should count on finding a Jurassic iPhone. It wouldn't last millions of years, Gorilla Glass or no. We know this to be true for even the recent past, as the city of Troy, where Homer's famous work, The Odyssey, took place, were considered to be fictional until 1870. Frank posits that finding fossilized bones is a slightly better bet. However, if another advanced species walked the Earth in the distant past, if they even walked upright at all, it would be easy to overlook their remains. Human beings have been around for only thousands of years, and our fossil record is spotty enough we cannot all agree on our own history. Schmidt and Frank suggest using human technology as our guide, looking into compounds like plastics and other long-lasting synthetic materials, as well as checking for signs of radioactive fallout from past conflicts involving nuclear weapons. So from here we have our first clue. In 1972, a French factory obtained uranium ore from Oklo, located in Africa's Gabon Republic, that had already been extracted. Finding this exceptionally unusual, researchers decided to investigate. They found evidence suggesting that the site from which it had been mined had somehow functioned as a large-scale nuclear reactor around 1.8 billion years ago, operating for an estimated 500,000 years. Keep in mind that the half-life of radioactive material, while not 100% predictable, is one of the standards of how we measure age. Dr. Glenn T. Seaborg, former head of the United States Atomic Energy Commission and Nobel Prize laureate for his work in heavy element synthesis, argued that this reactor was not a natural phenomenon but rather a human-made nuclear reactor. He emphasized the need for highly specific conditions for uranium to undergo a reaction. These conditions include an exceptionally high level of water purity, surpassing natural occurrences, and the presence of U-235, an isotope critical for nuclear fission and one of the naturally occurring isotopes in uranium. Numerous specialists in reactor engineering have contended that the uranium at Oklo likely did not contain a sufficient concentration of U-235 for a natural reaction to occur. Was Dr. Seaborg right when he said human-made?
I feel like somewhere along the lines we've had a similar conversation about this with this particular element too.
We did.
Yeah. When was that?
During the moon. The moon episode.
During the moon episode. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
People should probably
But you
look
know,
that up.
one of the things that we did not cover
Mhm.
that was a theory, and I laughed about it and said it's highly unlikely,
Right.
was that there was world war that was occurring between the moon
Mhm.
and Earth.
Now that's interesting.
Mhm.
That is interesting. Because it shows like that this was something that seemingly like we're at the stage we could cause this to happen now.
Yeah.
But in that distant past, we shouldn't have even been on the planet. But this thing, in order to produce what it had produced, because they're just pulling this out of the ground.
Mhm.
Like it's nothing. Like they're like, oh, well, we're going to put out a tender for, someone to produce us X amount of this highly reactive substance. And in, where was it? In the Gabon Republic, someone's just like, oh, we got a bunch of this just lying in the dirt here. So they send it all over and they're like, well, that's not how that works. So it looks like at least this is something like this is one of the markers that scientists think we would look for if we were looking for previous civilizations and what might have become of them. So I think that's interesting. Like that's one of the things that we're supposed to look for and one of the things that we have found.
That really sucks, Nick.
Why?
I really hope to be more like Fallout.
Oh, where people just like went underground and come back up again?
But not Fallout 76. That one.
Oh,
sucked.
yeah, a lot of people don't like that.
Fallout 1, 2, and 3. Those three. That's the way I thought it should be, Nick.
Well, I mean, they could have rolled little boulders in front of caves. Waited for over. Maybe there was a moon-Earth war.
We didn't even cover that one either. That was one that I wanted to cover, but I'm like, I'm already going far-fetched, and everyone's going to think I'm crazy anyway.
That one's kind of out there. I will give a little spoiler, and I wasn't going to do this to the end, but through my research of this particular episode, it's going to be almost required study for people to go back to your moon episode, and whether they want to take everything away from it or not, they're going to want to listen to some of it, because after doing the research for this episode and where we're going to arrive at the end, I'm a little more open to some of the things you laid down that I wasn't so open to before.
Yes!
So, I mean, not everything, but I also discovered that there are a lot of scientists that are taking that seriously these days, and pretty mainstream scientists.
I mean, listen, and I think I said it in that episode, we have no clue because we weren't there.
Right.
No differently than, I mean, someone told me something the other day, and I've not researched this.
Right.
This could be completely wrong. But even the story of Jesus came back after 3 days. We just dealt with Easter, Passover. So, for all the religious folks out there, we just had that holiday come up. But he told me there was 32 people before that also died and was resurrected 3 days later.
A lot of the mythologies have similar ones, like
Correct.
Osiris and
Hercules.
Yeah, a lot of these different ones.
Yeah, he was going through all of
Yeah.
them, and I'm like, all right, I don't know enough about that to. The problem with having a podcast, a reputable podcast company like us, is when I run into people and they go, hey, do you know this story about, and then they tell me and I'm like, I have no clue what you're talking about. Listen, I know.
If you
if
want
I didn't cover it,
that list, there's a video that covers it. And actually, have you heard of Zeitgeist? Remember that old video?
No.
That at the end goes through a whole comparison of every one of them.
The 32, is that what you mean? The 32 resurrected?
I don't know the exact number, but probably so. Probably so. But I mean, that doesn't mean that that's not so. Like, just because there's a lot of them doesn't mean it's not so. Every time someone tells a story, even if it's for a true event, they tell it a little differently.
Well, his point was that it didn't take away from the Jesus narration, but what he said was, we've not had any after that. So is that the one that stuck?
Oh, is that the best one? That's interesting. I would be surprised religious people would even accept that there were previous ones to it.
I mean, we can't prove or disprove anything.
That's true.
It's a lot of people, and I know, listen, I know I take my fair amount of heat from people that goes, I don't understand how he can say he's a Christian and deal with all this, because he talks crazy sometimes, and that's fine. My thing is, and maybe I'm wrong, I'm fine with being wrong, a lot of this stuff I don't think is heaven hell things, if that makes sense.
Right.
It's like, if I am open to interpretation on things, do I think that God is going to look upon me the day that if there's something on the other side, like I believe there is, and he goes, you know what? You said that everything didn't happen in 7 days. You said it could have been 7,000 days. You're now condemned to hell. I just don't see that happening.
Here's my point of view on this subject. If you are afraid to look at different theories, discuss different theories, the root of that fear is that your faith is not that strong. If your faith is strong, none of that can hurt you.
No. And like I tell everyone at the end of the day, because some people's like, man, don't you feel foolish if you're wrong? And I'm like, I won't know, because if you're right, there's nothing after.
Right.
I'll just end up being a better person while I'm here.
Well, from my point of view, that's the only thing people should be striving for. Like, what is more important than making sure everyone around us has the best life possible?
I think it's that some people believe that if your entire existence is trying to, and I say it all the time, and I'm sure people get frustrated with me saying, people that know me, I'm not talking about people on podcast land. I always say I try to leave things better than how I found them, no matter what it is.
Yeah, that's the opposite of me, so I'm glad you're doing that.
But, the way I look at it is, I don't ever want something to be worse than how I found it.
Right.
I want it to be better. I want people to be better. I want to strive to make people themselves see that, hey, I could make this better. But I think some people's more in it for, what's the maximum I can get out of this moment in my life and screw everyone else?
Yeah, it's a very short-sighted point of view, and both from the perspective of religion and also from the perspective of evolution, that's dumb. Because this is one thing that they both agree on, that working together and being kind to each other is beneficial to our bodies and our souls. So.
Correct. It's funny though, because it's like some of my friends, they're Jews, like they're Orthodox Jew. I've got some friends of mine that's just Jews. Yep. They're not Orthodox, but they're Jews. I've got friends of mine that they believe in the Islamic faith. Who am I to say that any of them are wrong?
Right. That's a very personal thing, really.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So my standpoint is, let me believe what I believe. I'm going to let you believe what you want to believe. If you have questions about what I believe, I'll be more than happy to answer whatever those questions are. For anything that someone can give me, typically I have some type of rebuttal, or I'll be the first one to say, I don't know how that works. Yeah. The Bible doesn't really say.
Yeah. Actually, in my day-to-day work, one of our main sayings is, It's no shame to say you don't know, but it's only a shame if you're unwilling to find out.
Correct.
Yeah. So I mean, that's stuff
That's
we
smart.
should all be able to agree on.
Should.
Right. Right. And we do. So that's what matters.
Correct.
Because it's only us two on the podcast. So.
But
Yeah.
that's what makes our podcast better.
That's right.
If I'm being 100%,
Mhm.
if it was two of me on here that have the same points of views, if it was two people that's more agnostic like you,
This wouldn't work.
I don't think we'd come to the same epiphanies that you
No,
and I have on some
Definitely
things.
not.
But there's got to be open-mindedness also.
Yeah.
I think, as much as I hate to say it, we live in, and listen, I have kids and I see how they handle things. And sometimes I want to shake it out of them, but I can't because that's illegal. But
Dang.
the new theory on how to counteract some of these thought processes is let me shout you down. There's no more conversation.
Yeah.
It's listen to me, and I'm in an echo chamber, and I'm not, it goes around to everything. There's nothing that you can ever. I had a conversation today with someone, and we was talking about news reporting, and I said, you can watch 3 different news channels. All 3 of them cover the same exact story, and all 3 give a different narrative.
Yeah.
Based on how they split up the context of what they're talking about. And that can be done biblically. That can be handled from a scientific perspective. The key is everyone sits down and very kindly and humbly listen and say, hey, I understand where you're coming from. Maybe we don't agree.
Right.
And at the end of the day, sometimes we just agree to disagree, and that's fine.
Yeah. That doesn't have to make us enemies. And that's the
No.
problem. And that is the source of all conflicts. When
Yes.
one side cannot accept the right of the other side to have an opinion. And that's why civilizations fail. That's why it's dangerous for us to have nuclear weapons. And that's why probably previous civilizations are no more. Or one possible reason for that.
Agreed.
But
Also, I want to say civilizations like you. Civilization.
oh, am I saying it funny? Am I saying it Canadian?
You're saying it very Canadian.
How would you say it?
Every time you do it, I want to drink tea with my finger up.
Civilization.
Civilization.
Wait, you say
not
it
how we
normally
say
so I can hear.
Civilization.
Ah, yeah, I do hear the difference.
Yeah.
Let me try.
Civilization.
Civilization.
There you
There we
go.
go.
That's the American way
American,
right
y'all.
there. There was someone, I don't know if I told you this, somewhat off story, and then we'll go right back. Someone we was talking, I'm about to pull the curtains back a little bit on our podcast. We're not actually in the same room.
Oh no, you're
And
giving it away. What are you doing?
As you can tell, based on Nick and myself, he speaks with a different accent than me, and this completely shocked somebody last week.
I'm glad that that this thing behind us is convincing sometimes.
It was hilarious because he's like, well, where's Nick at? And I'm like, somewhere in Canada. And he goes, he just looked at me. He's like, what?
Is he traveling? I just kidding.
He's like, he doesn't live in Ohio. And I go, no.
I love that. I love that happened.
Me too. It made my entire day.
Yeah, that made my. One day we'll record in the same area, but it will still be the same background.
Same background. Same background.
It's kind of defeats the whole purpose, but the coloring will be exactly the same. That's the difference.
It will be exactly dead
That's
on
right.
accurate.
That's right.
With minimal editing.
Exactly.
Oh man.
But yeah, so back on topic, although we got so far off there for a second, I don't even know how to bring it back.
Just the fact that we're able to talk to each other and allow everyone to have their own thought process and principle. Sometimes, listen, I go off the beaten path, but I know where I was.
Yeah, and most of the time we know where we're going. In fact, I have recovered And I know that we talked about what could have happened to previous civilizations and what science says is a good indicator of previous civilizations. And we found that in the nuclear material. But, and this sort of goes along with your Fallout scenario, what if there were certain parts that went underground or from the previous civilization? Could they bring back some technology or some knowledge of
the reptilians?
Not
yes.
Well, we don't know. We don't know. I don't think so.
That's what they are. The ones underneath the ground is reptilians. It's in every single. What are you talking about? That's every single sci-fi movie.
What if I go on a subway
Reptilians.
and I come out? I'm not a reptilian. That's underground. I'm saying people might have went underground and come back out. Or maybe these fallen angel guys. Or reptilians. We can be reptilians.
Yeah. 100%.
But yeah, so they could come back out, restart civilization, and just like you said, if everyone who made phones passed away, you're not going to know how to do it, but you might remember it. You might have hints about it. So is there stuff from the past, like out of place artifacts, that might allude to old technology?
Though Frank and Schmidt in their paper state that finding artifacts from highly advanced civilizations might be difficult, they did not say it was impossible. Some long-lasting and perplexing examples do appear to have been unearthed. The caves near Mount Baigong in China have captured attention due to the discovery of pipes leading to a nearby lake. The Beijing Institute of Geology studied the almost flawless pipes buried throughout the mountain and dated these pipes to approximately 150,000 years ago. Reports from Xinhua, the state-run media, reveal that the pipes underwent analysis at a local smeltery. Surprisingly, about 8% of the material could not be identified. In 2007, Zheng Jiandong, a geology research fellow from the China Earthquake Administration, shared with the state-run newspaper People's Daily that some of these pipes exhibited high levels of radioactivity. Jiandong speculated that iron-rich magma from deep within the earth might have risen into fissures, where it solidified into tubes. Despite offering this explanation, he acknowledged the mysterious nature of the pipes, pointing to their radioactivity as just one of their intriguing characteristics. As another example of potentially ancient infrastructure is the unexpected use of electricity to some capacity. The Baghdad battery is a fascinating but more recent discovery. These clay pots were discovered in 1936 in an excavation near Baghdad. The batteries are about 5 inches long and have a piece of copper around a bar of iron. Testing with a replica of the battery was filled with a fruit juice to use as an acidic. The battery produced about 1 volt of electricity, proving that this was indeed an ancient battery. Perhaps one of huge banks of batteries. It is speculated that the battery may have been used to electroplate metals or for medicinal purposes. In the 1960s, a famous paper was rediscovered during the wave of ancient astronaut writings, triggered by Erich von Daniken's best-selling book, Chariots of the Gods. This spawned claims that the Baghdad batteries were used for everything from electroplating jewelry and coins to generating a seemingly supernatural electric shock when connected to an idol or temple statue, to powering electric light bulbs inside the pyramids and the lighthouse at Alexandria. Could these lost technologies be something taught from extraterrestrials, or perhaps more likely natural previous inhabitants of our own planet?
So that's the non-scientist guy that I was going to reference in this episode, just Erich von Daniken. I'm not saying he's an expert in anything in particular, but he talked a lot about these
Reptilian
people.
Yep.
That was one of his things, wasn't it? Or no, that was David Icke or Icky or whatever it is.
Oh yeah. You're right.
Yeah, this is the
You're right.
Charity of the Gods, aliens kind of guy. But I could tell from your expressions that you had heard of the Baghdad batteries, and you had
we just found that 40 years ago?
1936. So not terribly long ago.
That's later than I thought it was. I thought it was like the 50s or something.
Yeah, it's a little earlier than that, but still relatively recent discovery. Had you heard of the pipes before as well?
Yes.
What did you think of the one guy's possible explanation of the pipes? No, wouldn't like iron-rich magma extruding through the earth. I don't feel like would make perfectly hollow pipes all the way along.
Yeah, it would not.
Right.
That made no sense.
Yeah. One thing that I didn't think much of when I was first researching it, but then I'm thinking back to the previous segment. These pipes had some exposure to radioactive material as well, which from the previous thing we talked about, it maybe there being a potential nuclear blast before that decimated the earth. I think it would be pretty natural that these pipes would have got exposure to it as well.
For sure. I mean, they went to water.
Right, exactly. Which probably would.
Yeah, radioactive water.
Yeah. So these are sort of like examples of technology that just is like so far in the distant past, there shouldn't be anyone around to make it at all. Or contrary to current understanding, like electricity and the understanding of batteries was being used way before we thought it was.
Yeah. Those clay pots.
Yeah.
They were freaking Tesla batteries back then.
And they're thinking that they might have had banks of it. One of the interesting things from Eric von Daniken is, and this might not have been clear in the narrative, he was saying that there would be a seemingly supernatural electric shock when connected to an idol or temple statue. And what he's referring to in that is for certain peoples might have been doing faked miracles where lightning would shoot from someone's finger or something like that. So he speculated that could be a use of it as well.
In which there was a lot of that. There was also temples that was created with hollowed out voice chambers. And people would go down into the cavities and talk through those pipes to make people believe that they were gods that was in those temples.
And I call that the Wizard of Oz effect kind of thing.
It kind of is, yeah.
There's some crazy things you can do if you wanted to trick people. Did I ever tell you about Casa Loma, which is like a castle that they built in Toronto up here? This guy was very paranoid, and I'm not going to get into the whole story, but yeah, he had a right to be. But he built a big ballroom with certain colored tiles, and if he wanted to know what people were saying to him across the room, he looked at the color tile they were standing on, and he'd stand at a corresponding tile, and no one except him and that person could hear that person talking, and it was all the way across the room. It was mathematically precise that sound would curve off the dome ceiling and go specifically to that square.
That's insane.
Isn't that wild?
That's insane.
But there's all kinds of stuff like that people can do. And that's just two examples. Have you heard of any other out of place technology or artifacts?
Oh yeah. There's tons of them. There's tons of this stuff.
What's one interesting one that you can think of?
Probably the most interesting one, and I don't know that they've even found a purpose for it. I forget what they call it. It's the thing that had the gears inside of it.
Yeah, we actually mentioned that earlier. The Antikythera mechanism. First, they think, and I think they're relatively sure, that it can calculate the movement of celestial bodies to such a precision that we can't even understand it today.
And the fact that they found it so deep was the assumption that it was used on boats to know exactly the navigation of where they were going.
There was another theory about that too, that this thing was way more old than we even suspected it was, because when the Library of Alexandria burnt, they placed that on a ship which was trying to run away with it, and then the ship was sank, and that's how it ended in the ocean. So they think it was ancient even to them.
Wow.
So that's a very good example.
Even if you look at newer technologies, Tesla was messing with all this electrical stuff. And he was basing a lot of his concept and ideas from pyramid research. So when you have someone like Nikola Tesla that's looking at pyramids and going, there's something there. I think that Nikola Tesla knew that pyramids was used for power.
I think he had some kind of understanding of lost information that not many of us or any of us really have.
I think that's why he was killed.
Interesting anecdote about that is I'd never heard of Nikola Tesla, and I watched a movie that featured him. And until the main character met Nikola Tesla, I thought it was sort of like a documentary. And then when he went to visit Tesla, the technology, like the light bulbs placed in the ground around this mountain, he could light up. And there was like all these fantastic things. I thought, well, this has just turned magical. This isn't real. But he was able to do that stuff.
Yeah, he did that.
Right.
That was legit what he was doing.
Exactly. Like, that's wild. But I think that kind of thing just didn't necessarily come from nowhere. I think he had an understanding of things that people had figured out before.
All of his boxes disappeared. Why you reckon that is?
No. Not for the good of the people. I'm sure of that. No. We talked earlier about you taking a little trip to somewhere. I don't remember if you said where it was.
London, Ohio.
Right. So I was looking through my notes and I saw there was a place in the US called London. And I'm like, oh, is this the same place? But this was actually London, Texas. Have you heard of the London Hammer?
No.
It's a fully defined absolute hammer that was...
Are you talking about the one that had the iron and something else?
It was encased in rock, and they think it's 140 million years old. A hammer encased in rock in Texas, of all places.
Yeah, but they believe the composite of that is iron, correct?
I don't have that in my notes, but I think so.
Yeah, I think I do know about this, actually. Yeah. I think that they found it and they've done x-rays but they believe that the iron is not forged. They believe that it was almost molded.
Okay. Do they think it's naturally occurring, or they're just saying that it was molded by people?
They don't know.
But
for a long time, they thought that it was a hoax.
You know what? A lot of these start that way. I think the Antikythera mechanism started that way too.
Correct.
Yeah. But that's one, and I'm surprised to find that, like in America, you don't see a lot of this stuff, like super ancient history come from there. But supposedly, at one time, all these places were connected. Then we've got the Nazca lines. The crystal skulls. That's an interesting one. We still can't figure out how they were created and polished.
No.
And I won't get into all the different Indiana Jones theories about those. I'm just looking at them like things that were created without the aid of modern instruments that we have no idea about. But there's lots of examples.
But just as important, every single pyramid around the world align with each other.
Yeah, that is something that I only learned recently. In fact, you might have told me that. And that is fascinating.
I mean, we can probably just have been able to do that precisely. We're talking within centimeters. We're not even talking within inches. We're talking less than an inch. They're precise. Right. We have a big one here in Ohio. We have a really big one.
What, a pyramid?
We have a serpent mound.
Oh, what is that?
That's huge. It was created. They don't talk about it a whole lot. I've always wanted to go there. Serpent Mound. It's in Peebles, Ohio.
Okay.
And it's a historical landmark, but it was created a long time ago. Serpent Mound is a internationally known national historical landmark built by ancient American Indian cultures of Ohio. It is an effigy mount for the shape of an animal representing a snake with a curled tail. Nearby are 3 burial mounds, 2 created by Adena culture from 800 BC to AD 100, and one by the forked ancient culture, which is AD 1000 to AD 1650.
Oh.
Now, here's what's interesting about it. Those same serpent, or the same serpents that's on that those mounds are created based on, you will also find in Egypt.
Oh, man, I do think you're psychic sometimes. Do you want to know why I'm saying that specifically now? It's because this is the second time that you've made some perfect segues into the next segment. Because the next part's all about Egypt.
I'm
this
lucky,
is two references. You did this one with the serpent in Egypt, and right before that, you did the pyramids and how they're all aligned. Well, it seems like Egypt was specifically attuned to this ancient knowledge. And remember, in this episode, we're not necessarily talking ancient aliens. We're talking about people who inhabited the earth in the first go around. And I think that the Egyptians had some insight into that.
The way that we come to know the history of humans on Earth is often through our written and oral records. Is it possible that human civilizations, ancient to us, did the same with advanced civilizations that were in turn ancient to them? We may have some records of this in the hieroglyphics of Egypt that sometimes appear to depict technologies we consider very modern. For example, in the Temple of Hathor is found a hieroglyphic that appears to resemble an early version of a light bulb. The enigmatic symbol known as the Dendera light has garnered attention among scholars. Supporting the theory that this depicts a light bulb are surrounding symbols, adding depth to its interpretation. The bulb, featuring what appears to be a cord extending to a box, hints at a potential power source. Atop this box sits Shu, the deity associated with air maintenance and cooling, suggesting a connection to the heat generated by such a power source. Adjacent to the light bulb lies another significant symbol, the Jed pillar, often symbolizing stability in religious contexts. Advocates of the light bulb theory draw parallels between its design and modern capacitors used in power plants. Even more impressive still are a large number of hieroglyphics found at a temple in Abydos. In the ancient city, within the famed temple of Seti I, strange hieroglyphs were discovered on the ceiling, appearing to depict modern or extraterrestrial vehicles. Some claim that the Abydos carvings are evidence of ancient astronauts visiting Egypt over 3,000 years ago. The carvings, which appear to very closely depict a helicopter, a tank, a blimp, and an airplane, definitely seem out of place. Some speculate these are simply coincidences produced by natural wear, or some ancient peoples attempting to erase the writings. What if they are what they appear to be? Is it possible that these modern technologies, which are very specifically suited to function with the conditions of Earth, are from previous inhabitants of our planet rather than from visitors from the stars?
So that was all about Egypt, with you conjured from your mind. And one of the first things that we saw is there seems to be an almost perfect hieroglyphic depicting a light bulb. It's got the little coil inside. It's got a cord going from it into a power supply. Power supply has the god of heat regulation and control over it, taking care of the heat that this power source would generate. And then there's got these pillars depicted that looks just like a capacitor in a power generator. And I think you might have seen this before.
Yep. This is I looked at some of this stuff before. There was I took a huge interest in, well, really two parts. When we talked about Dorothy Eady, I looked into some of the hieroglyphics then.
Oh, I couldn't miss it in that one.
Yeah.
What an episode that was too.
And the other thing is I had just a huge interest in the pyramids, and it became the fact that they was talking about the astronauts, because there's figurines
Right.
that are carved out that looks like they're the equivalent of like a helicopter in the hieroglyphics things, but they also have these figurines that look like rockets.
Man, you know, it's crazy. There's so much of this in Egypt. We
Yeah.
could have almost done a whole episode just on that.
For sure.
Like, it's real easy to see how people get from Egyptology to ancient astronauts. Like, real easy.
Real easy.
Yeah.
They
you
even
know,
have the ones where they're wearing the wristwatches.
right. And there's ones with the bubble helmets and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And this is like a far stretch as well, but some people even related to like the depictions of halos on angels
Oh,
were circles that were actually helmets at one time. I know that's a little far-fetched, but I mean, as
I
far
can
as
see
I
where they
know,
get it
I don't
from,
know
though.
where a halo would come from. Like, I don't
Me
remember
neither, Nick. I'm
reading
still
any
trying.
parts about that. Like,
I'm still trying to get my halo.
no, you're working on it. It's in the mail. Amazon delivering.
Exactly.
Yeah, but so I guess the point we're coming at from here could be ancient astronauts, but all this technology that's depicted is stuff that works specifically on a planet exactly like ours. So it seems to me it would make even more sense if it was from a previous, almost lost civilization that some people maybe survived, or maybe there were records around in our ancient times of their ancient times, and they were able to find out about this. Because when I see those hieroglyphics, I can't see anything but what people are saying there.
For sure.
Did you catch? It was quite brief. What skeptics are saying caused all these hundreds of modern technology depicted in hieroglyphics. Did you see what they explained them away as?
Mm-mm.
And I'm making a little bit of fun of this because I don't believe this. They're saying it's where people try to erase it, and it just happened to look like that.
Yeah.
That's nonsense.
The
There's
best
no
thing they
way.
could have done on that, instead of going that direction,
Mm-hmm.
is by saying it's a case of what do they call that, where you basically see
Like
Basically-
patterns where they don't exist.
yeah, but it's especially like in photos, you see something that you think your mind finds the pattern. What is that
Right.
called? It starts with a D. Can't believe I say it all the time. Because people be like, look at this ghost picture I got with, and I'm like,
Is it
Man.
Deceptive Reality?
it really should be. Gosh dang it. Starts with a D. Why can't I think of it? I literally say it.
There's another word that could explain this kind of thing. It's called apophenia. Have you ever heard
Yeah.
of that? That's the
Mhm.
tendency to perceive connection or meaningful pattern between unrelated or random things. Because we have, like, as humans, we have pattern-seeking minds.
Correct.
That's how our ancestors used to keep safe at night.
Pareidoia. It's a P, I'm sorry.
Pareidoia.
And that's seeing similar objects or patterns and otherwise random or unrelated objects or pattern is known as
Oh.
pareidoia.
Yeah, that sounds almost the exact same thing as apophenia.
Yeah, it says it's a form of alphaphenia,
Yeah.
which is
So-
a more general term for a human tendency to see patterns in random information.
Yeah, like there's certain things that are sort of almost bred into us, like
Mhm.
things that look like a snake we find disturbing, like even if they're not. Like if you look out of the corner of your eyes and you see like something long and slender, the first thing your reptile brain goes to is like, oh my god, a snake.
Right.
Like, and that's just how people are, like, because those pattern recognitions that we use quick judgments on, that's what kept
Yeah.
us safe when we were cavemen.
We had to survive. Yeah,
Yeah.
so pareidoia is a type of aphophenia that occurs specifically with visual stimuli.
Okay.
People with this tendency often will see human faces and inanimate objects. Some examples of pareidoia include seeing a face in a slice of bread or seeing the
Mhm.
shape of a bunny in a random mass of clouds.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah,
that stuff happens. And I guess, certain people have it to a higher degree than others. Like someone might see a face in a piece of toast and the next person must be like, I don't see anything.
For sure.
There. So
remember back in the day when they sold that piece of toast that had the depiction of Jesus on it?
Yeah, I wonder where that ended up.
Spoiled.
Meanwhile, it's like in a glass case right behind you and you just don't want to admit to it.
The only thing that would make that thing not spoil is if it originally came from McDonald's, but I'm pretty sure
that'll outlive us all. We need to find a Jesus Big Mac. That's what we need.
Well, we have here a COSI, and what COSI is basically a scientific museum.
Oh, okay.
COSI stands for Central Ohio Scientific Institute. But for like 10 years, they had McDonald's, a Big Mac, fries, and something else, and it never spoiled.
That's wild. That's like that.
Didn't grow mold. It didn't have anything.
That's like the honey in the Egyptian tombs. Like,
yeah.
You know what? It's going to be easy for future civilizations to find the remnants of ours because there'll be nothing but dust and then layers of fries and hamburgers.
I did watch this thing this weekend and I was shocked. Literally shocked. It talked about how Alzheimer's,
yeah.
Yeah. That apparently has not been around since 1964.
Oh, why? It didn't exist before then, or
scientifically they did not have a clear direction, and also, dementia is a form of it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But what's interesting is, guess what came out right before those two major things that kill more people?
I may be way off, but is it McDonald's?
No. That would be a good guess. Margarine.
Oh. Wasn't it originally turkey fattener?
Well, what they said was, because margarine's obviously made out of plants. It's plant-based.
Right.
A big part of it. The human brain is made up of 75% cholesterol. So we was getting all of our cooking stuff by using butter.
Yeah.
And fats. So when we went to margarine to reduce pricing and to make things easier to store, we lost a lot of that stuff that was giving us extra cholesterol.
Oh.
Now, the guy kept referring
to that cholesterol then.
According to him, he kept saying in a completely unrelated piece of science, and then he'd tell the next part and he'd go, now in another completely unrelated subject. And he kept doing that all the way to the end. He goes, for anyone that is medical, if you have patients that are struggling from this, if you could tell me in the comments down below how many had been using margarine versus these other things, I would appreciate it. I'll send you the file. It was a TikTok I saw.
You know what I would wonder about is in a lot of other countries, especially Asian countries, they're not using margarine.
No.
Like they're using lard and but they are using like peanut oils and stuff like that, but never margarine. I doubt it.
Yeah.
I wonder if they have much lower rates of that.
I would be curious. I don't know.
Yeah, that might be
curious.
Homework for us to find out.
Correct. And for the record, all you people, I'm not a scientist. I heard it from TikTok, okay?
Learn a lot of stuff on TikTok.
Good night. Some of the comments we get. But anyway, yeah. Just goes to show science technology. Now, if there was like sticks of margarine in some of them hieroglyphics,
there could be. How would you know? How would you know?
Could be.
Like they got square, they got rectangles. Could be margarine.
We'd be like, man, look at that stone structure they was building. No, that was just a big thing of margarine.
Well, you know, they got obelisks. They look an awful lot like a big stick of margarine.
Multiple sticks.
Yeah, could be.
Could be a big old margarine.
Or it's butter.
That too.
But yeah, that's a better explanation though. Like what did you say it was called? Pareidoia?
Pareidoia.
Pareidoia. Yeah, pareidoia would be a better explanation than, and that's something I can buy. But someone just randomly scratching something out and it makes a helicopter, a tank, all this stuff. Nah, I don't buy that.
Yeah, that's unlikely.
But if it is pareidoia, it fully worked on me because I can't see anything else when I look at those.
Oh, for sure. But that's the thing. I think it comes down to, like, if someone has pareidoia, my assumption is
I think everyone's got pareidoia.
For
I
sure.
think everyone's got it.
The question is to what degree.
Right? Exactly.
So my thing is if and when I say if I've got pareidoia, I mean to a degree to where we can comprehend something, right?
Right.
But if we all have pareidoia, I shouldn't be able to look at something and go, that looks like a helicopter, and then you look at something and go, that looks like a helicopter.
Right.
We should see something close, but have a slightly different interpretation. If it's that close to where you can guess and I can guess, something to that.
So there is something to that. I fully believe that. Now, could it be something else? Yeah. But
here's the thing, though. When they
I'd
talk
have
about
to see that right next to it.
When they talk about helicopters, though, you know what helicopter it looks like to me?
What?
The Apache.
Oh, like the attack helicopter, or
yes. When you look at the
look like
hieroglyphic,
that, doesn't it?
It looks just like an Apache helicopter.
Yeah. So I guess the other point I want to make about this, and that others have made, is like people are saying, "Oh, ancient aliens," and you know what? That's a fun theory, and there's a lot of things that might support that, but helicopter only gonna work on a very specific human-like planet, like not human-like but Earth-like planet, because it would have to be built different to work in different atmospheres, all that kind of stuff.
Correct.
To me, it looks exactly like the ones we have here now.
Correct.
You know, the tank, like on a planet that's, you know, mostly water or different gravity or soil composition, probably not going to work the same. Probably would look a little different. You know, I think these are things that were developed on Earth, and maybe someone saw those and says, you know what, I bet that's a way that we can accomplish flight, not realizing that we're unearthing old technologies.
But think about it. We talk about, this looks like a tank, this looks like a helicopter, an Apache helicopter, which is an attack helicopter.
Yeah, very specific.
These are all items of war.
Right. And
we're talking
the
about
only
these
other remnants we found,
around.
Radioactive.
Right.
So all we've seen is they've developed items of war. There's been evidence in very distant places like Africa. China has the same radiation in the pipes, has the same radiation in the water near the pipes, has the same radiation dug right out of the earth in Africa as in China. You know, it looks like maybe a war did happen, and that's what might have erased them off the face of the earth to make room for us, the next part, the next civilization.
Very well could. That's the thing.
And on a night of perfect segues, I want to take us into the last part, which explains a little bit about another scientific, two scientific theories actually. One about what happens to societies and why we have trouble finding life outside in space when it should be plentiful.
Where would such a pre-human civilization come from, and where did they go? A popular theory about the development of life on the planet as a whole is that the universe may have abundant sources of life, but much of it was delivered to the other planets. This theory is called panspermia, in which life is planted, either intelligently or accidentally, on a world. An earlier pre-human civilization could have developed and reached technological advancement on Earth long before human beings. However, one of the solutions to the Fermi paradox, called the Great Filter, may explain why a pre-human civilization may no longer exist. The solution states, as civilizations advance, they will eradicate themselves via some sort of technology run amok, such as doomsday-level weapons, malevolent AI, nanotechnology, or environmental collapse. Those that do survive the Great Filter would venture into space to colonize additional worlds, perhaps leaving little trace of themselves. There may be ways to learn if this is truly the case, but not necessarily on Earth itself. The moon has become a focal point for Jason Wright, an esteemed astronomer from Penn State University, who is among the select few researchers delving into the notion of pre-human technological civilizations with a rigorous scientific approach. Habitable planets like Earth possess a remarkable ability to erode and decay unmaintained structures on their surfaces, Wright explains. Thus, he has embarked on a quest to explore the intriguing possibility that such a civilization could have been spacefaring. In his pursuit, he contemplates the prospect of encountering artifacts of their advanced technology, known as techno-signatures, dispersed throughout our solar system. Wright advocates for expanding the search beyond just the lunar surface, proposing investigations into asteroids and potentially buried artifacts on Mars. These locations offer promising opportunities for the preservation of such objects over vast spans of time, spanning hundreds of millions or even billions of years. In the almost unfathomable history of the planet we currently call home, we may not have been the first. It's possible that if we can survive the Great Filter, we too may leave to find new homes amongst the stars and be a lost civilization for Earth's next inhabitants to discover.
All right, so there was a lot going on in that one.
Mm-hmm.
So, but this is my favorite part of this, because we're talking about where would they go. One thing that we talked about was the Great Filter, even though we didn't name it that, where most technological civilizations will destroy themselves.
Yeah.
They'll create weapons of war like Apache helicopters, tanks, nuclear devices, blow themselves up. That's one solution to why we don't see technological civilizations out in space at the rate that we would assume there would be. So that's one solution to the Fermi paradox. The other thing is, if they don't destroy themselves, they head out into the stars to colonize other planets. Now, Earth
Superman
churns through everything. What's that?
Superman. Story of Superman.
Kinda. Except our Earth didn't explode. It probably just was exploded upon.
Why did their planet
But,
explode?
I really don't know why their planet exploded. Do you know the story
Wasn't
of that?
they at war? I thought they was at war.
Oh, they were at war with Brainiac and the robots, which would be, and this specifically mentions, malevolent AI and nanotechnology.
Yeah, it's basically where the story of Superman.
Yeah. So either the first civilization here, there's only two options. They destroyed themselves or they left to colonize other planets, which could go along with almost destroying yourself. Like maybe they ruined the environment enough that they couldn't stay, so they had to head out. So this scientist, Jason Wright, he says the Earth is in flux so much that it just sort of gobbles up traces of really ancient things. So it's really hard to find stuff, even though we've presented a whole bunch of stuff that could be related in this episode. But he said on their way out, they could have left things on the moon. They could have had different technology on the moon, and the moon doesn't churn things. So he's saying we should investigate technology on the moon, maybe the artificiality of the moon, which leads us to a little homework for everyone, because we have a spectacular episode on the moon. I don't remember the number of it, but it's a two-parter that goes really deep into the science of the moon being artificial, which I kind of scoffed at the beginning. And since I've done further research, I've kind of been like, I was a little too harsh on Bert, maybe.
I knew this day would come.
The regret in my heart is strong. But yeah, they're saying it. We want to look at the moon. We want to look at Mars, because the evidence that gets destroyed on Earth isn't going to get destroyed on those planets and planetoids. So we should look for a trail of people exiting the Earth on those to see if we can make any archaeological discoveries.
That's why I'm so shocked we don't look at the dark side of the moon, as they put it. And I know It's not dark.
That's what he's proposing. He's saying, like, we got to check the moon thoroughly to see if we can find evidence of these previous civilizations.
This is just going sci-fi, right? Just for funsies.
Right.
If the Earth and the moon is at war, and we're tidally locked,
right,
to get as far away from any kind of nuclear, what would you do? You go to the other side.
Yeah. It would be real hard to target the other side of the moon.
It's kind of hard to target it.
Yeah. And it shows that they were, like from our previous segments, they were producing what seems like nuclear weapons, or at least nuclear power sources that went wrong on the Earth. So, I mean, that is sci-fi, but you go back and tell anyone what we're doing these days, they'd be like, 100 years ago, they'd be like, no way you're doing that.
Correct, yeah. I mean, the moon, we found Neptunium and we found uranium.
Right. Actually, that's probably where we talked about that element.
Yeah, it was.
That was in the previous segment. So,
because why would that be on the moon?
Yeah. Like, why would that be on the moon? So this is a real good opportunity that people should go back and look at this. I know. Correct. I should have believed you. I shouldn't have been so harsh. I shouldn't have been so
Nick's
harsh.
got to go back and watch our episode too.
I've got to go back. And check it out. I'm still not 100% on board, but I think I was a little close-minded, and I got to atone for that. So,
as you should be.
How I'm going to atone for this is the next really wild, far out, crazy, nutty, cuckoo thing you tell me, I'm just going to be like, you got it, man. I believe it.
That's perfect. That's all I need, Nick. That's all I need.
You get one free, because I should have been more open-minded. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying I should have been more open-minded. But the good news is we've got some legitimate people looking into it. Like this Jason Wright is serious, and he's well respected from what I read. And there's others like him.
That's all we need. We just need, and I keep saying this because we don't know. We wasn't there.
Right.
We need to look into any viable option to try to explain what's legit and what is not,
right.
What is not legit.
Yeah.
And science is quick to go, well, scientifically, that's not measurable. Well, 100 years ago, we didn't say stuff like that.
Right.
100 years ago, we would say, you know what? That's a hypothesis. Let's try to disprove it.
Yeah. I think specifically in archaeology and paleontology, you can't ever discount anything, because you're discovering new stuff all the time.
But we do it.
I know. But we should.
You and I had that conversation about that guy. Who's the curator there in Egypt?
Oh,
the guy everyone
Dr.
knows?
Zahi Hawass.
That guy will not let anyone speak. And there's people that argue that those pyramids are not from the time frame that he says, and is not used the way that he says they were.
Which, in addition to that, and I don't know if I mentioned it before, he also says some wild stuff. So he should be the first one to listen to other people, because he says some wild stuff about it as well.
Correct.
But he is, I think, just a stubborn old man. And we need these younger guys who are coming up with open minds to look into this stuff. Not necessarily close-minded old fellas.
And we're time frames we can't necessarily. We talked about this during the Shroud.
Yeah.
Radio, when we look at radiocarbon dating, we don't know how accurate that is.
Right.
We can't accurately do it for things that's been around for 100 years.
Yeah.
But we're assuming the formula works for 1,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago.
Right.
A great example, they just found those woolly mammoths in, what was it, Wyoming or something? They found them in those mud pits. And they still had flesh on the bones.
That's pretty crazy.
They ate flesh off the bones from a woolly mammoth.
Who did?
Some guy, he said he wanted to be able to eat a woolly mammoth, and he did.
That man's name is Ronald McDonald.
Yeah, but his theory was that woolly mammoth was just around within the last 1,000 years.
Really? I don't know. You know, if for something that's 1,000 years old, I'd want to hear some legends about it, like maybe native legends. And if I heard some of that, I might come around to that theory a little more. Because I feel like there'd be some kind of oral history of that.
What was it, last month before that? They found the fossilized remains of what they believed was a dragon.
Oh, really? Now that I want to see. Oh, I just remembered one. The coelacanth. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Thought that was extinct for millions of years.
And just
it was
got
in
photos
fish markets in Taiwan. They sell them there.
Yeah. They've got
so
photos
that stuff
of them
happens. Now. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. I mean, there's people who eat them all the time. It was perfectly normal for that location.
What's that island they call Eve? It's the thing to where the volcanic sides rose up, and they're finding animals they did not think existed because there's no way for the animals to leave. It's almost like a Jurassic Park.
Oh,
and they're still investigating that area.
Man, that's fascinating.
They're finding animals they didn't even know existed.
Yeah. You know, a lot of the stuff we cover is like kind of out there. But the stuff that gets me really excited is stuff like that island.
Yeah.
When we talk about like the Fermi paradox, like what are reasons why civilizations aren't all over the universe?
Right.
Like the far out real life stuff is just as wacky as the stuff that we speculate about.
Correct.
Like that's what makes life awesome.
We talk about not understanding our oceans and what's in our oceans.
Right.
Like they found that great white shark that had that bite mark that went from the dorsal fin all the way to the front of its head.
Yeah, that's massive.
Now they're thinking that may have been a megalodon.
Okay, now I'm getting scared.
But do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they just found that. And it was one bite mark, because some scientists was saying that's where multiple things ate on it. It's jagged teeth, just like one animal bit it.
Have you seen how big megalodons were?
I think there was one on Sharknado, and that was huge.
Oh man, that's honestly that's terrifying.
It is terrifying.
I like
but
to
we
go
have no
swimming
clue.
in the summer.
We have no clue what's underneath there.
You know what? If there's megalodons, I hope I never have a clue.
Me neither. I don't want to know.
I don't want to know. I love swimming in the ocean. And you know what? I know there's things in there that can get me. But megalodons are too big. I don't want them coming to get me.
There's things down there that we don't even know what they are.
Yep. What was someone saying? We know probably more about our solar system than we know about the depths of the ocean.
We do.
Yeah.
We
That's pretty crazy.
do.
But all of this stuff together, like looking at the history of our own planet is important. Looking at space is important. Looking at the oceans is important. All this stuff together plays a part. And that's why we've got to be examining this stuff. And I think even the crazy stuff we go through has sort of like a small part in that. At least we're talking about it, right?
Correct.
But
this is why we're a reputable podcast company.
Yeah,
we're
that's
bringing
right.
all this stuff to light.
Almost scientists. Asterix.
Basically, we are scientists.
Asterix. Allegedly. You should edit in a little voice that says not actually scientists.
Like the old drug commercials.
Yeah, exactly.
These are paid actors.
Yeah. We aren't scientists. We just play one on TV.
Exactly.
So
what says you out there in podcast land? What do you think? Do you think this is far-fetched? Do you think it's realistic? Tell us in the comments down below.
Are we the first? Will we be the last? What's our fate?
Ooh, those are deep questions.
Oh yeah.
Well, until we see y'all on the next podcast, goodbye.
See you later amongst the stars.
Not real stars. Asterisks.
They're asterisks.